So I was trying to stay off the fence, but he was just walking down, pushing me up against the fence. But I felt like my footwork, I felt like every time he came in, I was able to hit him and then get off the fence. Islam's, what he's done is probably given him, I think he deserves the shot if he wants to step up, but I guess that's not my call. It's up to the UFC.
Makhachev next, all right? In Perth? Let's go. Cheers, Dana. Thanks, Hunter. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Unbelievable, and even more unbelievable if it grabbed some that fight in a favorable place for us, but who knows? Let's see what they come up with. Like I said in the past,
with the fight between Belal Muhammad and Jack Della Maddalena now behind them, Islam Makhachev has called out Maddalena, announcing his decision to move up to welterweight to take him on. Meanwhile, after securing a decisive victory over Belal Muhammad, Jack Della Maddalena reflected on the fight, admitting he expected it to be more challenging. He noted that Belal didn't pose much of a threat or cause significant damage. Despite taking a year off from the gym, Maddalena believes his hard work paid off, calling the win a blessing in disguise.
It was a lot of fun, Looking at my face, I didn't think Belal had that in him to do that much damage, but he did pretty well. Tough fight. I expected a tough fight, and I guess that's what we got.
After about a year on the shelf, what did you find early in the fight? Because it didn't look like it took you a long time to really start feeling it.
You know what, I got back in the gym pretty quick. I tried to work on my footwork, which is the first thing I could work on with the arm, and just worked on it since. But I've been at this for a long time, so I think the layoff was a good thing. It was a blessing in disguise. Got my hunger back, and I was just chomping at the bit to get back in here.
Jack also described this fight as the best executed game plan of his career. He emphasized that listening to his coaches and returning to his corner after each round was key to achieving success. Maddalena highlighted his effective footwork and solid defense, both of which played a crucial role in securing the win over Belal Muhammad.
I mean, honestly, it was pretty much what we expected. I wanted to use my footwork, head movement, try and sting him with the jab, hit him in the body, defend the takedowns. I feel like, thinking back on the fight, I think we stuck to the game plan pretty well. Went back to the corner, listened to my coaches, and kept asking them, am I up? And then when I heard 48-47, I thought, yeah, I definitely had 3 rounds in the bag.
Daniel Cormier also shared his reaction, noting that the fight between Belal Muhammad and Jack Della Maddalena was a major event. He stated that he had already anticipated it would be a dominant showcase for Maddalena, and the bout lived up to those expectations.
Presented by Total Wireless. Guys, hey, last night was a massive night in the UFC because 2 different weight classes got some answers. I discussed that and so much more in our post-fight reaction video. Don't miss it.
Reflecting on the fight, Jack Maddalena spoke about how Belal Muhammad repeatedly tried to press him against the fence, but he was able to counter effectively. He credited his footwork as the key factor in escaping those situations and successfully neutralizing Belal's pressure throughout the bout.
Going with the flow, I was trying to, the game plan was to stay off the fence. I feel like he does his best work on the fence. So I was trying to stay off the fence, but he was just walking down, pushing me up against the fence. But I felt like my footwork, I felt like every time he came in, I was able to hit him and then get off the fence.
Meanwhile, right after Della Maddalena's main event win, Makhachev took to social media to announce his next fight will be against the Australian, declaring his double champ plan is underway. Though not teammates, Della Maddalena and Volkanovski are close friends, and in his Octagon interview, Maddalena said he wants to beat Makhachev for Volkanovski, who lost to the Russian twice. He said, "You are not Volkanovski, I will show you different levels, keep my belt clean." A close friendship with Belal Muhammad had previously kept Makhachev from pursuing the welterweight title, but with Della Maddalena now holding the belt, he appears ready to make the move. Makhachev posted on Twitter after UFC 315, "Time to become a double champion. Let's go." Moving on, Daniel Cormier couldn't help but share his reaction to Islam Makhachev's call-out. He admitted he saw it coming, and while he initially thought a potential matchup with Ilia Topuria was on the horizon, he expressed confidence in Islam's decision to pursue a fight with Jack Della Maddalena at 170 pounds.
That for him to go there, he had to be doing big business, big business. It feels like now we're finally getting closer to what's next. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall to hear that conversation. How do we get you to fight Topuria? Or how do we get you to commit to fighting at 170? I know Islam's not afraid of anyone. I know Ilya is not afraid of anyone. Those guys will fight anybody. I'm just happy that now we've finally gotten to a point where we understand who is fighting who.
Acknowledging that Islam Makhachev wants him as his next opponent, Jack Della Maddalena expressed his willingness to take the fight. He praised Makhachev as a deserving challenger and called his move to welterweight a smart decision. Maddalena added that it's now up to the UFC to make the bout happen, but he's fully open to facing him.
I think that a lot of good welterweights, obviously I think Islam's, what he's done is probably given him, I think he deserves a shot if he wants to step up, but I guess that's not my call. It's up to the UFC.
Jack Della Maddalena also acknowledged that the welterweight division comes with its own set of challenges, but asserted that he's ready to take them on. He praised Islam Makhachev as one of the top pound-for-pound fighters, and highlighted that he's long wanted the opportunity to face someone of that caliber to truly showcase his best skills.
I mean, obviously the welterweight has a lot of good challenges, but I think if someone like Islam wants to step up, you've got to give him the shot, you know. Pound for pound, one of the best, and it would be a dream to fight one of the best pound for pound guys in the world with my first defense.
Calling his fight with Belal Muhammad a solid warm-up for a potential showdown with Islam Makhachev, Jack expressed strong confidence about stepping in against one of the best pound for pound fighters. He stated that he's proven his ability to take on anyone across divisions, emphasizing that his skill set is perfectly suited for this high-stakes matchup.
Yeah, Islam's a good. I think it's a good practice match for Islam.
And I guess just last thing, what would it kind of say about you if you can go in a 2-fight span from not being the champion to beating Belal, who I think is, you know, up there in pound for pound, to beating the #1 pound for pound fighter in the world?
It's a pretty good, good run, you know. But it's just the beginning. I think beating Islam would be just, this is just the beginning.
It's worth noting that Daniel Cormier, who had been anticipating this outcome, shared his thoughts on the development. He confirmed that Islam Makhachev is ready to embrace the challenge of moving up to welterweight at 170 pounds. Cormier expressed his satisfaction, pointing out that with Belal Muhammad, once seen as the main hurdle, now defeated by Jack Della Maddalena, the path is clear for this exciting matchup.
Makhachev has openly spoke about wanting to fight at 170. Chael Sonnen said that many in the weight class already recognize that when Islam comes, well, take a step back. Said Ian Gary publicly stated that. What I didn't know is how close he was to actually getting the opportunity to do that, to actually challenge for the welterweight championship of the world, and that the only roadblock was Belal Muhammad. So when Belal Muhammad said earlier this week, dude, just schedule your fight, it's all good, I'm winning, you didn't realize that Islam's literally standing on the doorstep of a championship fight. And the only reason he's not going in to fight is because his friend, Belal Muhammad, is the champion. Jack Della Maddalena wins this weekend. Islam's getting a title fight.
Furthermore, Daniel confirmed that he had been informed by Dana White that Islam Makhachev is set to move up and fight Jack Della Maddalena at 170 pounds. He also shared his thoughts on other potential matchups that were discussed along the way, expressing hope that it will ultimately be Makhachev who steps up to face Maddalena in what promises to be a thrilling welterweight clash.
Dana told us last night at that presser that if Makhachev and Della Maddalena for the welterweight championship is a possibility, they are taking that. And exactly what Ilia Topuria told you, he will then fight Charles Oliveira for the UFC lightweight championship. Now, has anybody been luckier than Drew Bronx? Because Drew Bronx actually lost his title shot. Shot went to Arman. Charles gets beat by Arman, beats Michael Chandler. Supposed to fight for the Arman's supposed to fight for the belt. In steps Moicano. Oliveira then gets pushed to the back, it feels like, because then here comes Ilia. Arman needs a shot. Now it's going to be him if Islam Makhachev goes up.
Sharing insider details, Daniel Cormier stated that if Islam Makhachev doesn't move up and Belal retained his title, it would likely be Ilia Topuria who steps in to face Islam Makhachev. He expressed his excitement for the matchup regardless of who ends up in the octagon, adding that, as a UFC fan himself, the prospect of either fight is something that genuinely excites him.
And if Islam Makhachev isn't able to go up and Belal retains the championship, now you get Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev. Dude, this whole thing, right, is so exciting to me, not only as an insider of this thing, but as just a general fan.
Meanwhile, Chael Sonnen has criticized Belal Muhammad for his loss, pointing out that Belal once claimed he wouldn't fight Islam Makhachev due to their personal relationship. Sonnen emphasized that after being decisively beaten by Jack Della Maddalena, neither the fans nor the UFC have any interest in seeing a future matchup between Belal and Makhachev.
We've got a situation now with Islam. Belal said, I will not fight Islam. That is not the attitude of our number one contenders. If you're Team Islam and you're sitting around and you're waiting because you believe you're going to go to 170 and get a title shot against Jack Della Maddalena, just to let you know, first off, nobody's asking to see that fight. And if at the same time you are refusing Ilia Topuria because he hasn't done anything in this weight class, and if I lose to him, it's too big of a risk, we'll just take that same argument and stick it up your ass at 170 where you haven't done anything. And I don't know if you've ever met more of a pro-Islam guy. I'm completely for Islam, but there's times in this sport where guys get out over their skis. I get the idea of the relationship with Belal and Islam. I actually don't want to come in front of that. I am not clamoring to see that fight.
Furthermore, Chael Sonnen highlighted that just as opportunities are being presented to Ilia Topuria, it's expected that Islam Makhachev will be given similar treatment at 170 pounds. He pointed out how impressively Topuria has previously performed at 155, suggesting that moving up to 170 shouldn't be an issue for either Topuria or Makhachev.
Neither are you guys. Whatever opportunities are offered to Ilia, we can assume is the same way that Islam would be treated at 170. But Ilia did have one tremendous difference, which is the courage to vacate. Not to weigh the fence. He fought the absolute best at 45, and now he's trying to fight the absolute best at 55.
Joining the wave of reactions, Ariel Helwani also shared his thoughts, highlighting the back-and-forth battle between Belal Muhammad and Jack Della Maddalena, calling it a brutal war. He praised Jack for his impressive victory, noting that it has reshaped the international UFC landscape and set the tone for the upcoming week of fights.
And it was a back and forth war. It was a bloody affair, rightfully so. Jack Della Maddalena wins, and he wins the title, and in doing so may have altered the UFC's big plans for International Fight Week.
Furthermore, Ariel didn't hold back in acknowledging the class and composure Jack Della Maddalena displayed post-fight, highlighting the respect and professionalism he maintained throughout. He noted that Jack's performance inside the cage was a true spectacle of elite-level fighting. Without relying on trash talk, Jack stepped in against Belal Muhammad and proved his dominance, showing the qualities of a true champion.
And he comes in there, doesn't say a lot of words, doesn't hype himself up, doesn't talk a lot of trash. You even saw in the post-fight interview, he wasn't giving DC much, but holy crap, when he is on, and if that takedown defense and if that grappling is a real thing now and will only continue to get better, when you couple that with his striking, this guy is an absolute force. He's an absolute beast, and I know that people want to give, you know, Belal stick, and I see people coming out of the woodwork now. I see Drickus, you know, tweeting at him and saying, like, you know, see you later, and he was one of the more, there it is, well done, JK. He was one of the more, you know, I don't know, polarizing champions.
Ariel Helwani argued that if Islam Makhachev moves up to 170, he should vacate his lightweight title, just like Ilia Topuria did. Weighing in, senior MMA writer Chuck Mindenhall criticized the UFC for prioritizing Makhachev, pointing out that his move impacts 3 divisions. He also questioned why a potential Charles Oliveira versus Ilia Topuria fight wouldn't be for a title.
Islam is going to move up now to 170. He has to vacate the title. If the dude who is sitting there waiting for a title fight at 155 just vacated his title, the 155 title has to be vacated if Islam moves up, no?
I agree 100%. I mean, and I don't understand how the UFC would give, in this situation with 3 divisions basically being affected over the course of this, why they would give Islam, you know, all power over the situation. I really don't know why they would do that. It doesn't make business sense. And Ilia Topuria, arguably, I mean, I know Islam does numbers that's crazy. Like, it seems like he's a little quieter, but he does numbers. But Ilia Topuria might be one of the biggest stars in the sport. So I don't know how you're going to say that his fight with Charles, if this is what ends up happening, is not for a belt.
Chael Sonnen echoed a similar opinion, noting that just before Islam Makhachev's call-out, Ilia Topuria had already announced his move up to the 155 division. He found it ironic and even humorous that now, suddenly, UFC insiders and experts are raising concerns about the situation. Sonnen emphasized the urgency of making the previously discussed matchup between Ilia Topuria and Jack Della Maddalena happen.
Post-Islam Money Moicano, and prior to today, Ilia Topuria, the undefeated, reigning champion of the world, moves into the division. And now you have a problem. What has more power? A number one ranked guy or an unranked, undefeated champion of the world? And it was one of these collisions that we haven't really seen before. So we didn't totally know how this was going to go. Now we've got some level of resolution today.
Chael Sonnen emphasized that a potential fight between Islam Makhachev and Ilia Topuria would be a much bigger event, especially if Topuria first faces Charles Oliveira. He reiterated that this has been his stance for a long time and believes it would be a spectacular matchup that makes perfect sense.
Now, these sound like great ideas to me. I've been pushing pretty hard for Charles versus Ilia, and that was subsequent of a world title. I just thought that Charles versus Islam, or Ilia versus Islam, is a much bigger event if Charles and Ilia find each other first. That's what I've maintained. So, I could normally get out right here. Like, as confusing as that was, the smart marks, you guys did stay with me.
Furthermore, Chael criticized the UFC for making questionable matchups, specifically pointing out that Islam Makhachev's call-out of Jack Della Maddalena is completely off the mark, especially with Ilia Topuria in the picture. He highlighted the challenges Ilia faces, particularly with his upcoming fight against Charles Oliveira at UFC 317. After already vacating the 155-pound belt, Sonnen emphasized that Jack Della Maddalena is now the new champion and should be the one to be fought next.
You guys understood all that was said. The problem is, this same article speaks to the idea that if Islam were to go up, he would be going up and he would be challenging Jack for champ status. And that's the part that becomes impossible. It is impossible for Ilia to fight for a world title at 317, possibly against Charles, for a vacated bout. You can't do that in the presence of champ.
At the same time, Javier Mendez voiced his thoughts on the situation, stating that if the UFC grants Islam Makhachev the opportunity to fight Jack Della Maddalena, it would be an incredible and unbelievable chance. He emphasized that Islam has been waiting for such an opportunity his entire career.
If they grant that to Islam, if that's what the UFC decides to do, it would be a legacy fight for Islam, because his goal was to fight for that welterweight title if it was available, meaning Belal wasn't there. But now that Belal's not there, if the UFC grants him that would be unbelievable, and even more unbelievable if it grants him that fight in a favorable place for us. But who knows? Let's see what they come up with. Like I said in the past, I've never been involved in any of the discussions when it comes to any of Khabib's fights or Khabib's fighters. It's always been Ali and Rizvan. They do an unbelievable job.
Reflecting on Islam Makhachev moving up to welterweight, Javier acknowledged that although he hasn't seen Islam compete at this division before, he believes it will benefit him by requiring less weight cutting and offering a quicker recovery time. He recognized that while the challenge is real, he remains hopeful that things will fall in their favor. Mendez confidently stated that it won't be a problem for either Jack Della Maddalena or Islam Makhachev to compete at 170.
I'm hoping, I haven't seen it, so I haven't seen him at welterweight, but I'm thinking, logically speaking, he has to cut less weight, and, recovery time is a lot less too. So, but if it is in Australia, we'll need it, because in Australia, they only give you 24 hours to recover. Then it's not a 36 hours like everywhere else. So we'll only have 24-hour recovery. So if that's the case, it's fantastic, and I don't know if that's going to be an advantage because of that reason. But if it's anywhere else where it's the 36-hour plus, then it's a nice advantage for Islam to recover quicker. Not that it's a disadvantage or not an advantage for Jack. It's the same for Jack, but for us, it could make a difference.
And there you have it. Big moves in the UFC as Islam Makhachev eyes the welterweight division and Jack Della Maddalena stands ready for the challenge. With top fighters like Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira making waves, the future of the 170-pound division is looking intense. What do you think? Will Islam dominate at 170, or will Jack prove he's the real deal? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more updates on the fight game.